Arletta's hands were trembling when she found me in the kitchen. 10 years old, face drained of color, eyes carrying a hurt that shouldn't exist in children. She whispered it like a confession she was ashamed to speak aloud. "Mama, was I a mistake? From when you were drunk in a bar?" The knife clattered against the counter before I even felt my fingers release it. My sister's voice. Her words. Weaponized against my daughter. I pulled Arletta close, feeling her tears soak through my shirt, smelling the wildflower scent of her hair mixed with something else, fear, confusion, the scent of innocence breaking. "You are not a mistake," I whispered against her temple. "And some people tell lies when they're afraid of the truth." She didn't understand yet. But she would. I stood, breathed once, and felt something ancient settle into my bones. That same knowing that had warned me the night my father died, the night Calix vanished, and now tonight. The third reckoning. If you're watching this video, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Now let's get to the story. Seraphine wasn't always my enemy. I grew up watching her move through rooms like weather, unpredictable, powerful, the one everyone noticed first. People were drawn to her chaos the way moths seek flame. I loved her. Trusted her. Especially when she swore we'd always protect each other. "Sisters before storms," she'd say, holding my hand during our mother's rages. The irony cuts now. For years, I gave her loyalty even when she gave me nothing but judgment. For years, she took small pieces of my peace, a comment about my choices, a look that said I wasn't enough, questions about Arletta's father that felt less like concern and more like excavation. But back then, I didn't see the rot beneath her smiles. Blood forgives. Love excuses. Until it doesn't. I first noticed it in small cruelties. Questions about my gift asked in front of others, making me sound unstable. Stories about my past reframed to make me look reckless. Casual mentions of how hard it must be, raising a child alone without even knowing who the father is. She never said it directly. She just planted seeds in every family gathering, watered them with sighs and concerned glances. The wounds deepened when I realized she'd been watching my house. Her perfume lingering in rooms I hadn't invited her into. Her voice on Arletta's lips, repeating questions a child shouldn't ask. But she was my sister. So I made excuses. Then came the message carved into my door, "They know who she is." That's when I understood. She hadn't just wounded me. She'd made my daughter a target. That was her mistake. You can betray a woman and she might forgive you. You can lie to a mother and she might excuse you. But when you weaponize a child's worth, when you paint a target on her back to save your own skin, you don't just cross a line. You invite a storm you can't survive. Rage would have been easy. Screaming at her in front of family, pointless. Seraphine crafted chaos like other women crafted recipes. She thrived on emotional explosions. They gave her fuel. No. I needed something quieter. Something she would never see coming. Something a woman with my particular gift could execute perfectly. So I did what she never expected. I smiled when she called the next morning. Even thanked her for opening my eyes to some hard truths. She laughed, that bright, crystalline sound that used to make me feel safe. She had no idea the door she'd opened led straight to her own reckoning. I didn't need to destroy her reputation. I needed to follow the thread she'd pulled, the one that led to men in dark cloaks, to hunters tracking my daughter, to a family that wanted Arletta erased from existence. For years, my intuition had been cataloging things without me fully understanding why. Seraphine's debts. Her strange new friends. The way certain people watched us at family dinners. Phone calls she took in other rooms. I dismissed it all as paranoia. But instinct doesn't lie. Last week, I started pulling everything together. Names. Dates. Transactions. The scent memory of men who'd been near my house. The emotional residue left behind in rooms where plans were made. By the time Arletta ran into the forest, by the time I found her unconscious in Calix's arms, by the time the hunters emerged from the shadows, I already knew. Seraphine hadn't just betrayed me. She'd sold us. And now, standing in the forest clearing with Calix at my side and our daughter's life hanging by a thread, I understood something she never would. A mother's intuition isn't a gift. It's a weapon. And I was done pretending I didn't know how to use it. The house felt wrong after I put Arletta to bed. Not visibly wrong, the doors were locked, the windows latched, the kitchen cleaned and dark. But wrong in the way only I could sense. Like the air had thickened. Like invisible eyes pressed against every wall. I stood outside Arletta's door for nearly an hour, listening to her breathe. The rhythm was off. Too quick. Too shallow. The breathing of someone pretending to sleep while their mind runs wild. "Sweetheart," I whispered through the wood. "I'm right here. Always." No answer. I wanted to go in, to hold her until the hurt dissolved, to explain everything about her father, about the night she was conceived, about why I'd kept the truth locked away like a dangerous secret. But timing matters with trauma. Push too hard and you break what's already cracking. So I waited. And while I waited, my gift started screaming. It began as a prickle at the base of my skull, the sensation of being observed. Then came the sense, faint but unmistakable. Leather. Steel. Sweat tinged with adrenaline. At least 3 distinct presences circling the property, maybe more. They weren't trying to hide from normal people. They just didn't know what I was. I moved through the house like smoke, checking sight lines from every window. The lake reflected moonlight in fractured silver. The tree line stood dense and dark. Nothing moved that I could see. But I felt them. Waiting. Watching. They know who she is. Seraphine's warning carved into my door suddenly made terrible sense. This wasn't about cruelty. This was about preparation. She'd told Arletta that lie to break her spirit, to make her doubt her worth, to make her vulnerable. And I'd left my daughter alone. I ran. Arletta's door swung open under my hand. The room exhaled cold night air, wrong, so wrong. Her bed was empty, sheets thrown back like she'd left in a hurry. The window stood wide open, curtains billowing like pale ghosts. No. No, no, no. I pressed my hands to the windowsill. It was damp. Fresh mud streaked across the white paint, small handprints smudged in panic. Below, the flower bed was crushed. Footprints, child-sized, barefoot, led toward the forest. She'd climbed out herself. My daughter hadn't been taken. She'd run. Because she believed she was unwanted. Because Seraphine's poison had convinced her she was a mistake, an accident, a burden I'd carried for 10 years out of obligation rather than love. The rage that flooded through me was white-hot and useless. I shoved it down. Rage wouldn't find her. Rage wouldn't keep her safe. But my gift could. I dropped to my knees in the flower bed, pressing my palms into the earth where her feet had landed. Immediately, sensations flooded in, fear, sharp and metallic. Sorrow, deep enough to drown in. And underneath it all, a terrible determination. I'll leave so Mama doesn't have to pretend anymore. "Oh, baby," I whispered to the empty air. "That's not how this works." I stood, let my intuition stretch outward like invisible fingers, and followed the emotional trail she'd left behind. The forest swallowed me whole. Isolde's reach was peaceful during the day, birdsong in dappled sunlight, families picnicking by the water. But at night, the woods became something else. Ancient. Watchful. The kind of place where old things waited for the unwary. Arletta's trail was clear to me even in darkness. Panic brightened like phosphorescence with each step. She'd been running, stumbling, crying. Her bare feet had torn on roots and stones but she hadn't stopped. Running from me. The thought cracked something in my chest. But then other sensations began layering over hers. Heavier footsteps. Multiple sets. The emotional residue of men who hunted rather than searched. Anticipation mixed with cold professional focus. They were tracking her too. And they were faster. I moved quicker, branches clawing at my clothes, my own breath coming harsh and ragged. My gift screamed warnings now, danger ahead, violence waiting, time running out. Then I heard them. Voices. Low and controlled. Men communicating in clipped military precision. East Quadrant. Fresh prints. Careful. The mother might be close. The mother's not the priority. Just the girl. Ice crystallized in my veins. They knew. They knew about Arletta, about me, about everything. And they spoke about my daughter like she was a contract, not a child. I crept closer, using every skill I'd learned from years of trusting my instincts over my eyes. The voices came from ahead, maybe 50 yards. Through the trees, I caught glimpses of dark shapes moving with coordinated purpose. 6 of them. Maybe more. All armed. All hunting my daughter. Then, cutting through the night like shattered glass. A scream. Arletta's scream. High and terrified and so close it stopped my heart. I ran. Branches whipped my face. Roots tried to catch my feet. My gift shrieked contradictory warnings. Go faster, be careful, they're waiting, she's hurt, danger everywhere. But I didn't care. My daughter was screaming. Nothing else mattered. I burst into a clearing and stopped so abruptly I nearly fell. The scene before me made no sense. Arletta lay crumpled on the forest floor, unconscious or worse, her nightgown torn and muddy. Standing over her, silhouetted against the moonlight filtering through the canopy, was a man I hadn't seen in 11 years. A man who was supposed to be dead. Calix Veylor held my daughter in his arms, and his eyes, those storm-gray eyes I'd tried so hard to forget, met mine across the clearing with an expression I couldn't read. Behind him, melting from the shadows like wolves scenting blood, came the hunters. And in that frozen moment, with my past and present colliding in a forest clearing at midnight, I understood with terrible clarity. This was never about Seraphine's cruelty. This was never about family drama or old wounds. This was about blood. Legacy. Power. And my daughter, our daughter, was at the center of something far more dangerous than I'd ever imagined. The largest hunter stepped forward, weapon gleaming. Lunara Thorn, he said, voice flat and final. Step away from the Villari air. This doesn't have to involve you. Calix's arms tightened protectively around Arletta. And I felt my gift click into a frequency I'd only touched twice before, the one reserved for moments when mercy becomes weakness and a mother becomes something far more dangerous. I smiled. You're right, I said softly. This doesn't have to involve me. I took one step forward. But it does. The forest held its breath, waiting to see what I would become. For 11 years, I'd imagined this moment. Finding Calix alive. Demanding answers. Screaming at him for leaving us, for disappearing the night I told him I was pregnant, for letting me believe he'd chosen his family's wealth over our impossible, beautiful love. I'd rehearsed 1,000 versions of this confrontation. None of them involved him holding our unconscious daughter while armed men surrounded us in a moonlit forest. Lunara. His voice was rougher than I remembered, scarred by time and whatever hell he'd survived. I can explain. Explain? The word came out strangled. You're dead. I went to your funeral. I watched them lower an empty casket into the ground while your mother glared at me like I'd killed you myself. The casket was empty because I wasn't in it. He shifted Arletta's weight, and I saw how carefully he held her, like she was precious, fragile, his. They faked my death, Lunara. My family. They said if I didn't disappear, they'd hurt you. Hurt the baby. So I. Step away from the air. The lead hunter's voice cut through our reunion like a blade through silk. Final warning. 6 men materialized from the tree line, moving with military precision. Dark cloaks. Weapons I couldn't name but recognized as lethal. Faces hidden behind masks that caught the moonlight like insect shells. They weren't thieves. They weren't opportunists. They were professionals. And they'd been hunting my daughter since she was born. Put her down, Veylor, the leader continued, his accent unfamiliar. Eastern provinces, maybe further. The Veylor bloodline ends tonight. You can die with her or walk away. Choose quickly. Calix's laugh was dark and utterly without humor. You think I survived 11 years of hiding just to hand her over now? My gift screamed warnings from 6 different directions. I could feel their intent like knives pressed against my skin, cold, focused, ready. But underneath their professional calm ran something else. Fear. They were afraid of Arletta. No, they were afraid of what she represented. I moved closer to Calix, every sense hyperalert. What did you do to her? Not me. His jaw tightened. They hit her with something. Some kind of dart. I pulled it out but... Let me see her. He hesitated, eyes searching mine across the space between us. Looking for trust that had died the night he vanished. Looking for the girl who'd loved him before betrayal carved her into something harder. Now, Calix. He lowered Arletta into my arms. The moment I touched her, my gift exploded with information. Poison, not deadly, but paralyzing. Designed to stop her from running, from fighting, from using whatever power they thought she had. The toxin was spreading through her small body like ice through water, slowing her heart, dimming her consciousness. But I could feel the antidote too, written in her blood chemistry like an equation begging to be solved. The satchel, I snapped at Calix. The leather one I always wore. Do you remember it? Something shifted in his expression, memory, recognition, grief. You still have that? Do you remember or not? You kept it stocked with herbs. Said your intuition told you which ones to carry. It's hanging inside my kitchen door. Can you? I'll get it. He was already moving. The hunters shifted, blocking his path. The leader's weapon rose. No one leaves. Then you'd better hope she survives without it, I said softly, pressing my hand to Arletta's chest, feeling her heartbeat flutter weakly. Because if my daughter dies here, your masters will have to explain why they sent 6 armed men to murder a sleeping child. We don't answer to morality, Mrs. Thorne. We answer to contracts. Lunara, Calix's voice held a warning I remembered from the old days, the tone he used when violence was about to break loose. Take Arletta and run. I'll hold them. You'll die. I've been dead for 11 years. What's the difference? The hunters moved. And everything went to hell. Calix fought like a man who'd learned violence in a crucible I couldn't imagine. He was faster than memory served, no longer the wealthy heir who'd charmed his way through parties and boardrooms. This version of Calix Veylor had been forged in darker places. He moved like water and struck like lightning, and within seconds, 2 hunters were on the ground. But there were still 4 more. And Arletta was dying in my arms. My gift screamed directions, left, dodge, down, now, and I obeyed on instinct, dropping flat as a blade whistled through the space my head had occupied. I rolled, came up running, daughter clutched to my chest. The herbs, I gasped at Calix. I know. He drove his elbow into a hunter's throat, spun, kicked another's knee backward with a crack that made my stomach turn. Get to the house. I'm right behind you. But my gift was shrieking a different truth. He won't make it. Too many. Too fast. You have to choose, save him or save her. The choice wasn't a choice at all. I ran. Behind me, steel rang against steel. Men grunted and cursed. Calix's voice rose in a wordless shout that sounded like fury and heartbreak combined. My daughter's heartbeat grew weaker with every step. No. Not like this. Not after everything. I skidded into my kitchen, grabbed the satchel with shaking hands, and dumped its contents across the table. Moonlight through the window illuminated dozens of small pouches, each labeled in my own handwriting from years ago. My hands moved without conscious thought, guided by intuition older than memory. Feverfew. Yarrow. Something else, something I'd gathered by the lake 3 summers ago because it felt important. Dried petals that smelled like thunderstorms. I crushed them together, mixed them with water from the kettle, and forced the paste between Arletta's blue-tinged lips. Swallow, baby. Please. Swallow. Her throat worked weakly. The kitchen door exploded inward. Calix stumbled through, blood streaming from a cut above his eye, breathing ragged. Behind him, 4 hunters poured into my home like a dark tide. The antidote, he gasped. Did you? Working on it. I tilted Arletta's head back, massaging her throat, willing the medicine into her system. How long until? Seconds. Maybe less. The lead hunter raised his weapon. Enough. The girl dies now. You can die with her or you can walk away. Last chance. I looked at Calix. He looked at me. And in that glance, 11 years collapsed into nothing. We were back in his car on that impossible night, young and reckless and so in love it hurt. Back in the moment before his family tore us apart. Back when we believed love could conquer anything. Together? I whispered. His smile was bloody and beautiful. Always. We moved as one. I felt the hunters' intentions before they acted, muscle memory telegraphing their strikes, emotional signatures bright as flares. I dodged left as Calix went right, and together we became something his military training and my supernatural gift had never been separately. We became devastating. Calix fought with brutal efficiency while I guided him. Behind you, duck, now, left side, weapon, my gift turning us into a single organism. He trusted my warnings without hesitation, moving on faith alone. The way he used to trust me before the world taught us better. A hunter lunged at me. I caught his emotional intent half a second early, sidestepped, and Calix's fist found the man's temple with surgical precision. Another came from the shadows. I felt him gathering courage, sensed the exact moment he'd strike, and called the warning. Calix spun and drove his knee into the hunter's solar plexus. 2 down. 2 left. Then Arletta gasped, a huge, shuddering breath that sounded like life returning to the dead. Her eyes fluttered open. Unfocused. Frightened. But alive. Mama? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm right here. The lead hunter's weapon tracked toward her. I didn't think. I moved. The world slowed to crystalline clarity. I could feel the hunter's finger tightening on the trigger, feel Calix turning too slowly, feel my daughter's fragile life hanging in the balance. And I felt something else rise up inside me, something primal and absolute and utterly without mercy. A mother's love is a fearsome thing. But a mother's wrath? That's divine. I caught the hunter's wrist just as he fired. The shot went wild, embedding in the ceiling. I twisted with strength I didn't know I had, and something in his arms snapped like dry wood. His scream was high and shocked. Calix hit the last standing hunter so hard the man crumpled like paper. Silence crashed over the kitchen. 6 hunters, some unconscious, some groaning, all defeated. My home destroyed. My daughter alive and breathing in rapid, frightened gasps. And Calix, standing in the wreckage with blood on his hands and wonder in his eyes. You've gotten better at this, he said quietly. I had to. I held Arletta tighter. You weren't here. The words hung between us like broken glass. The lead hunter stirred, coughing blood. You won't stop us. The bloodline ends with the girl. The contract demands it. What bloodline? I demanded. What are you talking about? Calix knelt beside the man, voice low and dangerous. Who hired you? Who wants her dead? The hunter laughed, a wet, bubbling sound. Someone who knows what she is. What she'll become. His eyes found Arletta, filled with something between awe and terror. The last Veylor heir. The one who'll destroy everything. She's 10 years old, I snapped. Not for long. He coughed again. They all grow up. And when she does, when her power wakes. He smiled through broken teeth. Better dead than crowned. Then he and his men began retreating, dragging their wounded, moving with the mechanical efficiency of soldiers who knew when to abandon an objective. The leader paused at the door. This was just the first wave, Mrs. Thorne. We'll be back. With more. With better. His eyes shifted to Calix. And next time, your bloodline reunion won't save you. Then they were gone, melting into the forest like nightmares fleeing dawn. I turned to Calix, still holding our trembling daughter. Veylor heir? Power? What the hell is he talking about? Calix's face was grave. Exhausted. Haunted by secrets that had clearly been eating him alive for over a decade. Arletta isn't just our daughter, Lunara. She's the last living descendant of the Veylor bloodline, an ancient family with gifts that make yours look ordinary. He met my eyes. My family didn't fake my death to protect their reputation. They did it because I refused to let them kill her when you were still pregnant. The world tilted. Kill her? She's your heir. Exactly. And that's the problem. His voice cracked. The Veylor line carries power that surfaces in the firstborn child of each generation. Power that others fear. Power that my family has been suppressing for 3 generations because they're terrified of what it means. What power? I don't know exactly. It manifests differently each time. But whatever it is. He looked at Arletta with love and fear in equal measure. It's enough that my own family wants her erased from existence. Arletta stirred in my arms, her voice small and scared. Mama? Why does everyone want to hurt me? I kissed her forehead, smelling wildflowers and medicine and the lingering scent of poison we'd barely defeated. Because, baby girl, I whispered, you're more important than they want you to be. Calix stood, moving to the window, watching the forest where the hunters had vanished. My family wants her dead, Lunara. They've wanted it since the moment you told me you were pregnant. His reflection in the glass looked older than his years, carved by guilt and grief. And they're not done. He turned to face us. They're just getting started. The hunter's cabin sat 3 miles into the forest, forgotten by everyone except the deer and the desperate. Calix had found it years ago, one of a dozen safe houses he'd prepared during his years of hiding, running, surviving. It was barely more than 4 walls and a roof, but it had a wood stove, canned food, and no windows facing the main road. It was enough. I laid Arletta on the narrow cot, covering her with a wool blanket that smelled like dust and abandonment. The antidote had worked, but her body was still fighting off the toxin. She drifted in and out of consciousness, her small face pale in the lantern light. Calix moved through the cabin with practiced efficiency, checking sight lines, barricading the door, setting tripwires made from fishing line and tin cans. His hands never stopped moving. Neither did his eyes stop tracking toward Arletta. You can talk to her, you know, I said quietly. She won't break. She already thinks I'm a stranger. His voice was rough with something that sounded like grief. What am I supposed to say? Hello, I'm your father, sorry I've been dead for your entire life? That's a start. He turned to face me, and in the lamplight I saw the weight of 11 years carved into his features. Lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Scars I didn't recognize. The kind of weariness that comes from carrying impossible choices. I wanted to come back, he said. Every single day. Do you believe that? I didn't know what I believed anymore. The man I'd loved had been charming, reckless, full of dreams about building a life together that defied both our families. The man standing before me had been forged by survival. By violence. By 11 years of running from his own blood. It doesn't matter what I believe, I said finally. What matters is her. As if summoned by the words, Arletta stirred. Mama? I was beside her instantly, smoothing her hair back from her forehead. I'm here, sweetheart. Her eyes opened, those storm-gray eyes she'd inherited from her father, and immediately found Calix standing awkwardly near the stove. Who is he? The question I'd been dreading for 10 years. I looked at Calix. He looked back. And in that moment, we made a choice together without speaking. No more lies. No more protection through deception. Our daughter deserved the truth. His name is Calix Veylor, I said gently. And he's your father. Arletta's face went through so many emotions I couldn't track them all. Shock. Disbelief. A flash of hope so bright it hurt to witness. Then confusion as her 10-year-old mind tried to reconcile what she'd been told her entire life with what I was telling her now. But Aunt Seraphine said. Aunt Seraphine lied. I took her small hand in mine. And I'm going to tell you the whole truth now. Everything. Can you handle that? She nodded, but I felt her trembling. So I told her. About the night I met Calix at a benefit his family hosted, how I'd been there as hired help, carrying trays of champagne through crowds of people who looked through me like I was furniture. How he'd smiled at me like I was the only person in the room. How he'd fallen in love with the desperate intensity of people who knew the world would tear them apart if it found out. About the pregnancy. About his family's fury when they learned their heir had gotten a low-born girl pregnant. About the threats, the pressure, the ultimatum. About the night he disappeared. They told me he'd left, I explained, watching Arletta's face. That he'd chosen his inheritance over us. I believed it because it was easier than imagining something worse had happened to him. But I didn't leave. Calix's voice was quiet but steady. He'd moved closer, though he still kept his distance, afraid, I realized, of overwhelming her. My family faked my death. They said if I didn't disappear, if I didn't let them tell the world I'd died in an accident, they'd hurt you both. So I vanished. I've been hiding ever since, trying to stay alive long enough to. To what? Arletta's voice was smaller than I'd ever heard it. To come back? To protect you. Someone's been hunting you since you were born, Arletta. I've spent 11 years tracking them, disrupting their plans, staying one step ahead. Tonight was the closest they've ever gotten. Tears spilled down Arletta's cheeks, not the angry, hurt tears from earlier, but something deeper. The kind of crying that comes from relief and heartbreak mixing into something too big for a child's heart to hold. So Aunt Seraphine lied? Her voice broke. About all of it? About you not wanting me? About Mama getting drunk and making a mistake? Yes. I pulled her into my arms, feeling her sob against my chest. You were never a mistake, baby girl. You were loved. You are loved. By both of us. Then why did she say those things? Arletta's words came out muffled against my shoulder. Why would she hurt me like that? Calix and I exchanged a look. I don't know, I admitted. But I'm going to find out. We found Seraphine 3 hours later. Her apartment was in the kind of building where the elevator never worked and the hallways smelled like failure. 4th floor, Unit 4C, paint peeling off the door like diseased skin. Calix had wanted us to wait at the cabin. I'd refused. Arletta had refused even harder, with the stubborn determination she'd inherited from both of us. She lied to me, Arletta said, jaw set. I want to hear why. So we came as a family, broken and strange and held together by trauma, but a family nonetheless. I knocked. Footsteps inside, hesitant. Then Seraphine's voice, muffled and frightened. Who is it? Your sister. A long pause. Lunara, you need to leave. Now. There. I kicked the door open. The apartment was worse than the hallway. Furniture that looked like it had been salvaged from curbs. walls stained with water damage and despair. And Seraphine, standing in the middle of the cramped living room, looking like she hadn't slept in days. She saw Arletta. Her face went white. "No," she whispered. "No, you can't be here. You can't be alive." They said. They lied. I stepped inside, Calix and Arletta behind me. "Just like you lied. About everything." Seraphine collapsed onto her stained couch, hands shaking. "I didn't know. Lunara, I swear to God, I didn't know they were going to kill her." "Start from the beginning," Calix said quietly, but there was steel underneath the calm. "And don't leave anything out." So she told us. About the debt she'd accumulated. Gambling, at first, trying to win back what she'd lost, chasing luck that never came. Then loan sharks. Then worse. Men who didn't just want money, who wanted leverage, who wanted access to things that could be sold or traded or destroyed for the right price. "They found out about you," she said to me, not meeting my eyes. "About your gift. About Arletta. They said they had a buyer, someone who'd pay everything I owed and more if I could deliver information." "What kind of information?" My voice was ice. "Location. Routine. Vulnerabilities." She was crying now, ugly desperate tears. I told myself it was harmless. That they just wanted to watch you, maybe try to recruit you. I didn't ask too many questions because I didn't want to know the answers. "So you told them where we lived?" Not a question. "Yes. And then you came to my home and told my daughter she was an unwanted accident." My hands clenched into fists. "You broke her heart to make her vulnerable." "No. I mean," Seraphine looked at Arletta, and something crumbled in her expression. "I thought if she ran away, if she left on her own, maybe you'd both be safe. Maybe they'd take her and realize she wasn't what they wanted and let her go." I didn't know. That they'd try to murder a child? Calix's voice could have cut diamond. "What exactly did you think was going to happen?" "I don't know." Seraphine screamed. "I was scared and desperate and they said if I didn't help they'd kill me. I chose myself over you and I'm sorry, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix this," I said flatly. Arletta hadn't said a word since we'd entered. She stood between Calix and me, staring at her aunt with an expression I couldn't read. Too old for her face. Too knowing. Finally, she spoke. "Did they pay you?" Seraphine flinched. "What?" "The men who wanted me dead. Did they pay you for telling them where I lived?" "Arletta, it's not. Did they pay you?" The silence was damning. "Yes," Seraphine whispered. "They paid half up front." Arletta nodded slowly. Then she turned to me. "I want to leave now, Mama. I don't want to be here anymore." "Arletta, please," Seraphine reached out. "Don't touch me." Arletta's voice was quiet but absolute. "You sold me. You lied to me. You broke my heart because it was easier than being brave." She looked at her aunt with eyes that had aged years in a single night. "I hope the money was worth it." Seraphine dissolved into sobs. I should have felt satisfaction. Victory. Something. Instead, I just felt tired. "Before we go," Calix said, "you're going to tell us who hired the hunters. Names. Details. Everything." "I don't know names." "They never." "Don't lie to me again." His voice dropped to something dangerous. "You just admitted they paid you. There was a transaction. A paper trail. Give it to us." Seraphine hesitated. Then she stood on shaking legs, walked to the kitchen, and pulled an envelope from behind the refrigerator. "This came with the first payment," she said, handing it to me. I wasn't supposed to open it. But I did. The envelope was expensive, heavy cream paper, wax seal already broken. Inside was a single sheet of letterhead. Veylor Industries. And a signature I didn't recognize, but Calix clearly did, because he went absolutely still. "What is it?" I asked. "My brother." His voice was hollow. "Marcus sent the order. He's the one who hired the hunters." Before anyone could respond, the building shook. Not an earthquake. Something else. Something deliberate. Calix's head snapped toward the window. "They're here." "Who's here?" Seraphine's voice climbed toward hysteria. "The hunters." He was already moving, grabbing Arletta, pulling me toward the door. "They tracked us. We have to." The apartment wall exploded inward in a shower of brick and flame. Heat blasted through the room. Smoke filled my lungs. Through the ringing in my ears, I heard screams, Seraphine's, maybe my own, and the roar of fire consuming everything. Calix had Arletta. I had his hand. We ran. The hallway was an inferno. Flames licked up the walls, eating through cheap paint and cheaper construction. The building was old, a tinderbox waiting for a spark. Someone had provided the match. "The stairs!" I shouted over the roar. We ran toward the stairwell, Seraphine stumbling behind us, coughing and crying. The metal door was hot to the touch, but we had no choice. Calix kicked it open and we plunged into smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hands. My gift screamed warnings, danger above, danger below, danger everywhere. "Down!" Calix commanded. "Move!" We descended into hell. The stairs were collapsing, metal groaning under heat it was never meant to withstand. Each step felt like a gamble. Each breath burned. Arletta clung to her father, face buried against his shoulder, and I prayed to gods I didn't believe in to keep her safe. Behind us, something gave way with a sound like the world ending. Seraphine screamed. I turned just in time to see the landing she'd been standing on collapse into flames. She fell. I lunged, my gift guiding my hand through smoke and chaos, and caught her wrist. For a moment, we hung there, me on solid stairs, her dangling over an inferno, both of us staring at each other with the weight of years between us. "Lunara," she gasped. "I'm sorry. I'm so. Save it." I pulled with strength born of adrenaline and fury and something I didn't want to name. "We're not dying here." Calix grabbed her other arm and together we hauled Seraphine up onto stable ground. Then we ran. The building was dying around us. We hit the ground floor just as the ceiling began to cave. Burst through the front entrance into cold night air that felt like resurrection. Fire trucks were already arriving, sirens wailing. Neighbors gathered in stunned clusters, watching the building burn. And standing across the street, illuminated by flames, I saw him. The lead hunter from earlier. He met my eyes across the chaos and smiled. Then he melted into shadows, gone before I could even shout. Calix saw him too. His arm tightened around Arletta. "We can't stay here. Seraphine can stay with the authorities. She'll be safe enough in custody." I looked at my sister, smoke-stained, trembling, crying tears that might have been remorse or might have been fear for her own skin. "This is where we part ways," I said quietly. "Lunara, please. I can help. I can tell them everything. You've helped enough." I took Arletta's hand. "Stay away from us. If I see you again, I won't be this kind." We walked away. Behind us, the building that had housed my sister's desperation collapsed into flames. And ahead, in the darkness, I felt the hunters waiting. "Where do we go now?" Arletta asked, her voice small but steady. Calix looked at me. I looked at him. And together, we made another choice. "Somewhere they won't expect," he said. "Somewhere my family thinks I'd never dare go." "Where?" His smile was grim and determined. "Home." The refuge was a warehouse on the industrial edge of Isolde's reach, the kind of place where shipping containers went to die and questions went unanswered. Calix had a key. Of course he did. He seemed to have keys to half the forgotten corners of this city, each one another piece of the survival network he'd built during his years as a ghost. Inside, the space was cavernous and cold. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights, painting silver stripes across concrete floors. Calix led us to a back room where someone, him, probably, had stashed supplies. Blankets. Water. A camping stove. The essentials of a life lived in hiding. Arletta sat on an overturned crate, wrapped in a blanket that dwarfed her small frame. She hadn't spoken since we'd left the burning building. Since we'd left Seraphine standing alone in the street, surrounded by strangers and her own guilt. I wanted to comfort her. I didn't know how. How do you comfort a child who's learned in one night that her aunt betrayed her, her father was never really dead, and men with weapons want her erased from existence? Calix must have been thinking the same thing because he kept looking at her like she was a puzzle he desperately needed to solve but had lost the instructions for. She needs to understand, he said quietly to me. About what she is. Why they want her dead. She's 10 years old. And she almost died tonight. She deserves to know why. He was right. I hated it, but he was right. Arletta, I said gently, kneeling in front of her. Your father needs to tell you something. About your family. About who you are. Those gray eyes, so like Calix's it hurt, lifted to meet mine. I'm a mistake nobody wanted. Aunt Seraphine said so. Your aunt was wrong. Calix moved closer, settling onto the floor in front of her. Not towering. Not imposing. Just a father trying to talk to his daughter. You're not a mistake. You're a miracle. And you're in danger because of what you represent. I don't represent anything. I'm just me. You're so much more than that. He took a breath, and I realized he was afraid. Not of Hunters or fire or his murderous family, but of this moment. Of telling his daughter the truth that would change her understanding of herself forever. My family, our family, isn't like other families, he began. The Veylor name carries weight in this world, yes. Money. Influence. Power. But that's not what makes us dangerous. Then what does? Arletta's voice was barely a whisper. Our blood. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a worn leather journal. The cover was scarred with water damage and what might have been blood. He opened it to a page marked with a ribbon. This belonged to my grandmother, he said. She gave it to me the night before she died. Made me promise I'd protect the truth inside it, even if my own family tried to destroy it. The journal's pages were covered in handwriting, elegant, old-fashioned, the kind people don't use anymore. But interspersed with the words were drawings. Symbols. Family trees that branched and twisted like roots searching for water. The Veylor family, Calix continued, descends from a much older bloodline. The Veylori. A people who existed long before modern civilization, before countries had names, before power meant money instead of magic. Magic isn't real, Arletta said, but her voice wavered. Your mother can sense emotions and danger before they manifest, Calix replied gently. Is that real? Arletta looked at me. I nodded. The Veylori had gifts, he continued. Different for each generation, passed down through bloodlines that guarded these abilities like treasures. Some could heal with a touch. Some could see the future. Some could bend the natural world to their will. He paused. And some could do things we don't have words for anymore. What happened to them? What always happens to people with power? They were hunted. Feared. Destroyed by those who wanted that power for themselves or wanted it extinguished entirely. His fingers traced the family tree in the journal. By the time my grandmother was born, only a handful of Veylori bloodlines remained. And most of those had been so diluted by marriages to ordinary people that the gifts had faded to almost nothing. Almost, I said quietly. Almost, he agreed. The Veylor family, my family, is the last undiluted Veylori bloodline. We've kept our blood pure for generations through very careful, very calculated marriages. All to preserve the gifts. But you said the gifts were gone. Diluted. Weakened. But not gone. He looked at Arletta with something between pride and sorrow. They resurface sometimes. Usually in the firstborn child of each generation. And when they do. He didn't finish. He didn't have to. They kill them, Arletta whispered. Don't they? Yes. The word hung in the air like a death sentence. My family has been eliminating gifted children for 3 generations. They call it protecting the bloodline's reputation. They claim the gifts are too dangerous, too unpredictable, too likely to expose us. But really? I asked. Really, they're terrified. Calix's voice went hard. My grandfather had the gift. He could manipulate probability, make unlikely things happen, shift odds in his favor. He used it to build the family fortune. But toward the end of his life, his power grew so strong he couldn't control it. Reality would bend around him. Impossible things would happen. He went mad from it. So they kill the children to prevent that from happening again, I said. They kill the children, Calix corrected, because they're cowards who'd rather destroy potential than learn to nurture it. Arletta's hands clenched in the blanket. And you think I have it? The gift. I know you do. He pulled another item from his jacket, the sealed letter Seraphine had given us. He opened it fully now, spreading it on the floor between us. The letterhead was embossed with the Veylor family crest. Below that, typed in cold, efficient text. Contract fulfilled, Veylor heir located. Authorization, permanent removal. Payment, as agreed. And at the bottom, signed in sharp, aggressive handwriting. Marcus Veylor. My brother, Calix said, and the words tasted like poison. The current head of the family. He's been hunting you since before you were born. But why? Arletta's voice broke. I haven't done anything. I don't even know what my gift is supposed to be. Because you exist. Calix's hands clenched into fists. Because your mother is lowborn and our relationship was forbidden. Because when you were born, the family seers confirmed what I already suspected, that you carry the gift. And that it would be stronger than any Veylor has possessed in a century. What does that mean? I demanded. What's her gift? I don't know. It hasn't manifested yet. But the seers were terrified enough that Marcus ordered your death while you were still in the womb. He looked at me. I refused. So they faked my death and told me if I ever came back, they'd kill you both. I've been in hiding ever since, disrupting their attempts to find you, keeping them focused on chasing me instead of hunting you. Until Seraphine gave them our location, I finished bitterly. Until tonight. Silence settled over us like snow, cold and suffocating. Arletta sat very still, processing information that no child should have to bear. Finally, she spoke. Does Aunt Seraphine know about all this? I don't think so, I said. She knew you were important somehow. But I doubt the hunters told her the full truth. She still betrayed us. Yes. For money. Yes. Arletta was quiet for a long moment. Then, I want to talk to her. Absolutely not, Calix and I said in unison. She's being held by the authorities, I added. And even if she wasn't. She's family, Arletta interrupted. She did something terrible and I'm angry and hurt and I hate what she did. But she's still family. And if we're about to go fight your murderous brother, I want to. I need to. She couldn't finish. But I understood. She needed closure. Or forgiveness. Or to prove to herself that despite everything she'd learned tonight, she could still choose kindness over rage. I looked at Calix. He looked back. It's a terrible idea, he said. Absolutely terrible, I agreed. But if we don't let her, she'll regret it forever. Probably. We sighed in unison. 1 hour, I told Arletta. And we're there the entire time. And if anything feels wrong, we leave, she finished. I know. The police station was chaos. The building fire had generated paperwork, witness statements, and bureaucratic confusion that would take days to untangle. In the middle of it all, Seraphine sat in an interview room, looking like the weight of the world had finally caught up to her. She looked up when we entered, saw Arletta, and burst into tears. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I'm so sorry. I know you can't forgive me. I don't deserve it. I just... Why did you do it? Arletta's voice was steady. Calmer than any 10-year-old's should be. Really? Why did you tell them where we were? Seraphine's face crumpled. I was scared. I owed money to bad people and I thought if I helped them I could make it go away and you'd be fine, Anne. That's not true. Arletta stepped closer. You weren't just scared. You were angry. The statement hung in the air. Seraphine's tears stopped. For a moment, she just stared at her niece. What? You were angry at Mama. For having something you didn't. For being special when you weren't. For having me. Arletta's voice didn't waver. The money was part of it. But you also wanted to hurt us because it made you feel less alone in your pain. I started to protest, but Calix's hand on my arm stopped me. Because Seraphine wasn't denying it. I didn't realize, my sister whispered. I didn't realize that's what I was doing. But you're right. I was jealous. And bitter. And when they offered me a way to hurt you while pretending it was about survival. She covered her face. I'm a monster. No, Arletta said quietly. You're hurt. And you made terrible choices because of it. But you tried to warn us. With the message on the door. That counts for something. It doesn't count for anything. You almost died. But I didn't. Arletta moved closer still. And I'm choosing to forgive you. Not because you deserve it. But because I don't want to carry hate around for the rest of my life. Seraphine looked at her niece with something between awe and heartbreak. You're 10 years old. How are you this wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being angry. Arletta held out her arms. Can I hug you? Please? Seraphine fell to her knees and wrapped her arms around her niece, sobbing like a child herself. Arletta held her, small and strong and choosing grace over grudges. I looked at Calix. His eyes were wet. She gets that from you, he whispered. No, I said softly. She gets that from being better than both of us. We left Seraphine with the police and a promise that she'd cooperate fully with any investigation. She'd face consequences for what she'd done, financial and possibly legal. But she'd survive. We might not. We're going to the Veylor estate, Calix said as we walked back to the warehouse. Confronting Marcus directly. That's suicide, I replied. That's the only option. He'll keep sending hunters until Arletta is dead or he is. And I'm done running. Then we fight. I took his hand. Arletta took mine. Together. Lunara, this isn't your battle. She's my daughter. That makes it mine. We reached the warehouse as dawn began breaking over the city. Golden light painted the industrial wasteland in shades of amber and rust. Calix was planning our approach when my gift exploded with warning. Danger. Close. Getting closer. Multiple presences. Armed. Trained. Moving with purpose. They found us, I whispered. How many? Calix's hand went to the weapon he'd taken from a fallen hunter. I let my intuition stretch outward, counting emotional signatures like stars in a dark sky. 12. Maybe more. Surrounding the building. We can slip out the back. No. My gift sharpened, showing me something that made my blood run cold. They're not here for you, Calix. Then who? I looked at Arletta, and understanding dawned in Calix's eyes. They're here for her, I said. This isn't about stopping us from reaching Marcus. This is the final attempt. They're going to kill her right here, right now, before her gift manifests. The warehouse doors exploded inward. 12 hunters in tactical gear flooded the space, weapons raised, moving with lethal efficiency. And leading them, stepping through the smoke and debris with the calm of a man who'd already won, was someone I'd never met but recognized instantly from Calix's description. Marcus Veylor. Older than Calix. Colder. With eyes that looked at his niece like she was a problem to be solved rather than a child to be loved. Hello, brother, he said pleasantly. I believe you have something that belongs to me. She belongs to herself, Calix growled. A technicality. Marcus's smile was thin and sharp. She's Veylory. That makes her a family matter. And family matters are handled internally. His hand lifted in a casual gesture. The hunter's weapons tracked toward Arletta. And in that moment, surrounded and outnumbered, with death closing in from all sides, I felt something shift. Not in the warehouse. In Arletta. A pressure building. A power waking. The heir of the Veylory bloodline was about to discover what she could do. And I prayed we'd all survive the revelation. The warehouse became a battlefield in the space between heartbeats. Marcus's gesture was the starting gun. 12 hunters moved as one, a coordinated killing machine designed to eliminate a single 10-year-old girl. But they'd made one critical miscalculation. They'd forgotten what a mother becomes when her child is threatened. My gift exploded outward with a clarity I'd never experienced before. I could feel every hunter's intention before they moved, see the future written in muscle tension and emotional signatures. Left. Right. Behind. The world became a map of danger and I became something that moved between the threats like water through cracks. I grabbed Arletta, threw her behind an overturned shipping container, and turned to face the first hunter with nothing but fury and impossibly perfect timing. He swung a weapon at where my head should have been. I wasn't there. My fist connected with his throat, guided by instinct that told me exactly where to strike, exactly how hard. He went down gasping. 2 more came from opposite sides. My gift screamed warnings in stereo. I dropped flat, felt blades whistle overhead, rolled, came up with a piece of rebar I didn't remember picking up. Swung it with precision born from sensing exactly where they'd be. Metal met bone with sounds I'd hear in nightmares. Lunara. Calix's shout cut through the chaos. I looked up to see him facing Marcus across the warehouse floor. Brothers separated by blood and choice, by years of lies and the fundamental question of what family meant. This doesn't have to end in violence, Calix said, but his stance was pure combat readiness. Marcus laughed, a sound like breaking glass. It's already violent, brother. It became violent the moment you chose a low-born girl over your family's legacy. She was pregnant with your niece. She was pregnant with an abomination. Marcus drew a blade, curved, elegant, deadly. The seers warned us. They said the child would be powerful enough to destroy everything we've built. Every protection. Every carefully maintained secret. She would expose us to a world that would tear us apart out of fear. So you decided to tear her apart first? Calix's voice went cold. She's a child, Marcus. She's a weapon that hasn't learned to fire yet. And we eliminate weapons before they can be used against us. They clashed. The sound of steel on steel rang through the warehouse like a bell tolling for the dead. They moved with identical training, the same masters, the same forms, the same brutal efficiency. But where Marcus fought with cold calculation, Calix fought with desperate love. And desperate love, I'd learned, could accomplish impossible things. Around them, the battle fragmented into chaos. Hunters pursued Arletta's hiding spot. I intercepted them with a ferocity that surprised even me. My gift made me untouchable. I knew where they'd strike before they did, sensed their tactics before they executed them. I became prediction and violence combined, and they fell before me like wheat before a scythe. But there were too many. One got past my guard, lunged for the shipping container where Arletta hid. His weapon rose. Time slowed. I was too far away. Too slow. Too late. Then Seraphine appeared from nowhere, wild-eyed, desperate, still wearing the smoke-stained clothes from the building fire, and threw herself between the hunter and her niece. The blade meant for Arletta buried itself in my sister's shoulder instead. No! I screamed. But Seraphine didn't fall. She grabbed the hunter's wrist with her uninjured hand and headbutted him with enough force to shatter his nose. He stumbled backward. She kicked his knee sideways with a crack that made my stomach turn. Then she collapsed, bleeding. Aunt Seraphine. Arletta emerged from hiding, small hands pressing against the wound. Stay down, Seraphine gasped. Stay hidden. Let me, she coughed blood. Let me do this one thing right. I reached them, dropped to my knees beside my sister. The wound was bad but not fatal if we moved quickly. I pressed my hands over hers, over Arletta's, all of us trying to hold Seraphine's life inside her body through sheer will. You came back, I whispered. I couldn't, she coughed again. Couldn't let them hurt her. Couldn't let that be my legacy. Monster who sold her own niece for money. Her eyes found mine. I'm sorry. For everything. For all of it. I know. I know. Just hold on. Around us, the battle raged. Calix and Marcus were evenly matched, too evenly. They'd trained together since childhood. They knew each other's moves, anticipated each other's strategies. It was a stalemate written in blood and sweat. But then Marcus made a mistake. He glanced at Arletta. Just for a moment. Just long enough to confirm his target was still alive and vulnerable. Calix's blade found his ribs. Marcus gasped, stumbled backward, blood blooming across his expensive shirt. You always were too sentimental, he hissed. That's why father never trusted you. That's why the family chose me to lead. The family chose you, Calix replied, breathing hard, because you were willing to murder children to protect a reputation. I was willing to do what was necessary. You were willing to be a monster. I felt it then, a shift in the emotional landscape of the warehouse. The hunters had been fighting on autopilot, following orders without question. But now, with their employer wounded and the truth laid bare, doubt crept into their formations. They'd been told they were eliminating a threat. They were witnessing the attempted murder of a child. Even mercenaries have lines. I stood, leaving Seraphine in Arletta's surprisingly capable hands, and raised my voice to carry across the warehouse. You're following a man who hired you to kill his 10-year-old niece. I shouted. A child whose only crime is being born with a gift he's too cowardly to understand. Is that really the contract you want on your conscience? The fighting slowed. Stopped. One hunter lowered his weapon. Then another. Marcus saw his army deserting him and something in his expression cracked. She's not a child. She's a... I'm standing right here. Arletta's voice cut through the warehouse like a blade through silk. She'd left Seraphine's side and stood in the center of the floor, small and brave and absolutely done with being treated like a thing instead of a person. I'm 10 years old, she said, and her voice didn't waver. I like drawing and reading and swimming in the lake. I get scared of thunderstorms. I cry when I'm hurt. I'm a person, not a weapon. And I'm tired of being hunted by people who've never even met me. Power rippled outward from her like heat from a fire. The warehouse lights flickered. Concrete cracked. The air itself seemed to bend around her small form. Her gift was manifesting. And it was terrifying. Arletta, I started forward. I'm okay, Mama. She looked at me, and her eyes glowed with something ancient and absolute. I'm not afraid anymore. She turned to Marcus. You wanted to kill me because you were scared of what I might become. But you never asked what I wanted to be. The power around her intensified. I wanted to be normal. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to grow up without people trying to murder me. The floor beneath Marcus's feet cracked. He stumbled, genuine fear crossing his face for the first time. Arletta, don't. Calix moved toward her, hands raised in peace. You don't have to do this. I know. The glow in her eyes faded slightly. That's why I won't. The power retreated. The warehouse settled. Arletta stood in the center of the destruction she'd nearly caused and chose mercy instead. I'm not a weapon, she said again, quieter now. I'm just a girl who wants her family to stop trying to kill her. Marcus stared at her with something between awe and terror. The remaining hunters looked at each other, at their employer, at the child who just demonstrated she could have destroyed them all and chose not to. Then, one by one, they lowered their weapons and walked away. The contract was void. The hunt was over. Marcus stood alone, bleeding, defeated, abandoned by the men he'd hired and the certainty he'd built his life around. Calix approached his brother slowly, weapons still drawn but not threatening. You have a choice, he said quietly. I can end this now. Or you can surrender, face justice for what you've done, and maybe, find a way to live with yourself. You'd spare me? Marcus's laugh was hollow. After everything? I'd spare you because Arletta just taught me something about mercy. Calix glanced at his daughter with pride that made my heart ache. And because killing you won't fix what you broke. But holding you accountable might start the healing. Marcus was silent for a long moment. Then he dropped his blade and sank to his knees. I thought I was protecting the family, he whispered. You were protecting your fear, Calix replied. There's a difference. The aftermath was chaos of a different kind. Police. Ambulances. Investigators trying to make sense of a warehouse battle that looked like a war zone. Seraphine was rushed to the hospital with Arletta refusing to leave her side. The hunters scattered to the winds, their contracts terminated and their consciences their own problems now. And Marcus was taken into custody, charged with attempted murder, conspiracy, and a dozen other crimes that would ensure he never threatened anyone again. Calix gave his statement with the calm of a man who'd been waiting 11 years for this moment. The truth came out in waves, his faked death, his family's conspiracy, the systematic elimination of gifted children across 3 generations. By the time the sun rose, the Veylor family's darkest secrets were being examined by authorities who suddenly had very pointed questions about inherited power and institutional murder. I sat in an ambulance bay with Arletta curled against my side, watching the dawn paint the sky in shades of gold and rose. Is it over? She asked quietly. The hunting? Yes. I kissed the top of her head. Marcus will face justice. The family will be investigated. And you? I pulled back to look at her. You're officially recognized as the last Veylor heir. Which means you have protections now. Legal ones. Public ones. No one can touch you without the whole world knowing. What about my gift? What about it? I felt it. When I was angry. When I thought Marcus might hurt you. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I could have destroyed everything. I wanted to. But you didn't. Because I chose not to. But what if someday I can't choose? What if it's too strong? I turned her to face me fully, holding her small face between my hands. Then we'll figure it out together. You, me, and your father. We'll find teachers, learn about your power, help you control it. I smiled. You're not alone in this, baby girl. You never were. Even when I thought I was a mistake. Especially then. I pulled her close again. And I need to tell you something. The whole truth. About the night you were conceived. So I told her. About meeting Calix at that party, how we'd talked for hours, laughing like we'd known each other forever. About falling in love despite knowing his family would never approve. About choosing to be together anyway, defying expectations and consequences because what we felt was too real to deny. About the night she was created, not in drunken carelessness, but in deliberate, fierce, impossible love. You weren't born from chaos, I said softly. You were born from two people who loved each other enough to fight the whole world for their chance at happiness. You were born from courage. From hope. From the belief that love could create something beautiful even in the darkest circumstances. And from destiny, Arletta added, her voice stronger now. The Veylor blood chose me. Right? The blood chose you. But we chose you first. Your father and I. We chose you the moment we knew you existed. And we've been choosing you every day since. Tears tracked down her cheeks, but she was smiling. I love you, Mama. I love you too, sweetheart. More than you'll ever know. Calix appeared then, looking exhausted but lighter somehow, like a weight he'd carried for 11 years had finally been lifted. They're saying Seraphine will make a full recovery, he said. And she's insisting on entering rehabilitation. Wants to become someone her niece can be proud of. He smiled slightly. She said that exactly. Good, I said. She deserves the chance to try. He settled onto the ambulance bumper beside us. For a moment, we sat in silence, a broken family pieced back together in ways none of us could have predicted. What happens now? Arletta asked. Calix and I looked at each other. Now, he said slowly, we figure out how to be a family. A real one. Not hiding. Not running. Just living. Can we do that? Arletta's voice was small but hopeful. After everything? I thought about the journey we'd taken. The lies uncovered. The betrayals faced. The battles fought. The choices made. We'd been tested by fire and somehow emerged on the other side. Yes, I said with absolute certainty. We can do that. The sun climbed higher, burning away the last shadows of night. And we sat together, mother, father, daughter, watching a new day begin. 3 months later. The house by the lake had been rebuilt. Not just repaired, rebuilt. Stronger foundations. Better locks. Windows that could withstand more than just weather. We'd learned our lessons about security. But we'd also learned about home. Arletta's room was twice as large now, filled with books and art supplies and evidence of a childhood that was finally, blessedly normal. Calix had moved into the guest room. We were taking things slow, rebuilding trust that had been fractured by years and lies. But he was there. Present. A father learning to be a dad. Seraphine visited on weekends. She was sober now, 90 days and counting, working 2 jobs to pay off her debts without taking shortcuts. The relationship between her and Arletta was healing, slowly, carefully, like a bone that had been broken and needed time to knit back together properly. And me? I was learning to trust my gift without being ruled by it. Learning that intuition and intellect could coexist. Learning that being a mother meant letting go sometimes, trusting that I'd given my daughter the tools to navigate her own path. Tonight, we sat on the dock watching stars reflect on water. Did you know, Arletta said thoughtfully, that my teacher asked me to write an essay about my family? Oh. I kept my voice neutral. What did you say? I said my family was complicated. That we'd been through hard things but came out stronger. That my mom is the bravest person I know and my dad is trying really hard to make up for lost time. And that my aunt made mistakes but is learning to be better. That's very mature. Ms. Patterson said it was refreshingly honest. Arletta grinned. I think she was expecting something boring about vacations and holidays. Calix laughed, a sound I was still getting used to hearing. Your teacher has no idea what she's dealing with. Nobody does, Arletta agreed. That's kind of our thing now, right? Being unexpectedly complex? That's one way to put it, I said. We sat in comfortable silence, watching the lake breathe. Then Arletta spoke again, quieter now. Mama? Do you ever regret it? Having me? I turned to look at her, this beautiful, powerful, impossibly brave child who'd survived assassination attempts and family betrayals and learned to choose mercy over vengeance. Never, I said with absolute certainty. Not for one single second. Even when I was called a mistake. Especially then. I pulled her close. Because you taught me that the best things in life aren't mistakes, they're miracles we didn't see coming. Calix's hand found mine in the darkness. Arletta leaned against my shoulder. And I realized with startling clarity that this quiet moment of peace after the storm, was what we'd been fighting for all along. Not survival. Not victory. But the chance to be a family. Broken, yes. Complicated, absolutely. But ours. And worth every battle we'd faced to protect it. The lake reflected stars like scattered diamonds. Somewhere in the forest, an owl called. And my daughter, born not from drunken chaos but from destiny, fierce and unbreakable, smiled against my shoulder and whispered. I'm glad I'm here. So am I, baby girl, I whispered back. So am I. My daughter wasn't born from drunken chaos, she was born from destiny, fierce and unbreakable. And she would change the world. But tonight, she was just mine. And that was enough.